Hello, and welcome to Conversational Leadership with Jay Mann. I'm your host, Jay Mann, Superintendent of the Creighton School District, and we are back and excited for another great school year. And I have a very special guest here with me today for us to kind of do a little bit of review and a little bit of conversation about how it will work in the next year, but we're going to talk about student outcomes focused governance in Creighton, what you'll sometimes hear us refer to as SOFG. We're going to do a quick reminder what it is, why we're doing it, how it works, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing in Creighton to make certain that we are improving outcomes for the students that we serve. And so to that end, my special guest is Dr. Lorisa Pombo. Lorisa is our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, and Dr. Lorisa Pombo is one of the smartest people I know, so I'm excited to have her here with us today as we talk about student outcomes focused governance. So welcome, Lorisa.
Jay, thank you for having me here today. I'm so excited to talk about our new school year and what we've been planning all summer to get ready. But first, I think we should celebrate. We did a great job last year on our student outcome focused governance. As you know, we have 4 goals, 2 in math and 1 in our emerging multilingual population with language acquisition, and also our 3rd grade literacy goal. And all 4 goals we grew. Now,
it's awesome.
We didn't get there exactly, but we did grow a lot. For instance, for our math 8th grade goal, our goal was to improve 15%, and we improved 11%, which is amazing. That's double-digit growth. So we want to continue that this year because we want to make sure we're providing the best for our students so that they're all continuing to grow. So I just wanted to celebrate what we did last year with the help of everybody.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we really need to appreciate everyone in our schools that helps support this goal, everyone from our teachers and staff, our principals and leaders, our directors, the support staff, from the cafeteria to the buses to making sure our classrooms are ready to go. But beyond that, a big thank you to our governing board who has really spearheaded this work. And a very big thank you to our community, our parents, our partners, our families, and especially our students who really have leaned into this work with us and are working hard to improve not only their own outcomes, but the outcomes of their peers. And so I know we were very highly supported last year by working with our Creighton Kids Congress, which is super cool, like 2 representatives from each of our schools working on behalf of all the students in the district. I don't know that a lot of districts do that. And even most of the districts that have programs like that, the kids aren't involved in digging into the academics and improving academics in the district. So it's
I want to expand on that because our Kids Congress, towards the end of last year, we went over some of our inputs that we were doing, especially for math, and asking, did this help you in the classroom? Did you like it? And they gave us some really good feedback about the inputs that were really helping them be successful in math and excited about math. So we did add more of what they said was working for this next year for our action planning.
Yeah, it makes my heart happy because, we, instead of just looking at data, which we do, we look at data to a high degree of detail and try to use that data to drive what we're doing. But sometimes there's just no better data than asking the people that are literally the ones who are doing the work and being affected. So that's why I know we have our Coffee with Cabinet group. We meet with our teachers and staff union, the Creighton Education Association. We make sure that students are involved at multiple layers, but especially with that Creighton Kids Congress. And so being able to get those first-person voices that are actually experiencing what's happening, I think is really powerful. And their feedback was amazing. And I'm so excited that it's impacting how we're going to not only do the work this year, but even with the impressive growth we got last year, we need more. So the best way to get more is to talk to the people affected and have them weigh in, which is what we did.
Well, I think also with our I always forget what we call it, Teachers with Cabinet, and also
Coffee with Cabinet.
Coffee with Cabinet.
Yep. You came up with that name.
I know.
Yeah.
We were with the alliteration of Coffee with Cabinet, and also our Creighton Union. that they gave us a lot of feedback on our other inputs like coaching and professional development and how to
Right.
improve those inputs for this year. So we also adjusted to make sure those are the most effective they can be for our teachers.
Yeah.
And they really enjoyed the coaching and the professional
Right.
development and the cohorts that we had this past year. So we're
Yeah.
continuing that same work.
Which is awesome. So I'm going to have us just back up for a minute because I know, and this is my fault because I get excited. I got excited, started talking about what we're doing, right? And then we kind of rolled right into inputs because inputs are an important component of student outcomes focused governance. But let's go, like, you're one of our best experts in the district, you and our board president, Sophia Carrillo. So I'm going to lean into you to kind of give a quick overview of like, what are the components? Like, what are these pieces of student outcomes focused governance? Why are we talking about inputs today? And I know we've discussed some of this before, but some folks may be hearing it for the first time today.
Well, I have our student outcome focused governance graphic that we have on our website that you can access. We have a website that has all of our student outcome focused governance information and also all of our progress monitoring reports. But I'm just going to read the definition because I don't want to mess up the definition.
I think that's fair.
The student outcome focused governance is a framework, and it's based on that student outcomes don't change unless adult behaviors change. And using SOFG in the Crane School District was adopted by our board to create conditions that support improving student outcomes. So the ultimate goal of our organization is to improve student outcomes. And so everything that we do should be focused on helping our students grow and become proficient in math, reading, and writing and all the other content areas. And so our board adopted in 2023, 2024, adopted 4 goals based on historical data that they looked at. And those goals were also representative of our community. Our community said they went out and talked to our families and our partners in our community, and they really wanted us to prepare our students for high school because we wanted to make sure that they're ready to take the toughest math classes, English classes when they left Creighton School District. And so we kind of worked backwards from that to establish our 4 goals. And the 4 goals that we have is we have the first one's in 8th grade math. So it's the only one we want to reduce. We want to go from, reducing the number of minimally proficient students in math. The exact goal is 8th grade students that are minimally proficient. So when we started, it was 73%. And then by August 2028, we want it to be 48%.
Right.
The other goal that we have is a subgroup is we want our 8th grade Black students to score proficient, which this is what we want this number to increase from 0 to 29%. And so we are going to be starting our 4th year of working on, 4th year of when this framework started.
Right. Yeah. Year 1, we counted, but we really didn't have goals until May. So in some ways we're in our 2nd year, but we're calling it our 3rd year. And so we have 2 more years to go to hit those numbers. And, it's very interesting to me. It reminded me of those tough conversations around, choosing a particular subpopulation of students. And it's like, why would you choose this group? But when you look at the actual goal itself, to go from 0%, like we weren't just moving from 0% in that initial year. We looked back on 15 years of data and found it had been 0% for at least 15 years, if not more. We can't say that anymore because even though we're not where we need to be, we haven't had 0% now for a couple of years. So because we focused in on that goal. So that's a goal that I think was one that was challenging for us to really lean into, only because we have so many different subpopulations that we could focus on, but that was why the board really kind of dug in on that specific group of students in math. And
the other subgroup we have is our goal number 3, which is the percent of emerging multilingual students that increase 1 or more levels. On the Azella will increase from 25% to 40%. And this goal is really exciting because we've surpassed that goal every year. And this year, even though our 2028 goal is 40%, we got 58%, which is amazing. And we started out with, when we started the student outcome focused governance, we had 5,000 students and 1,500 of those students were emerging multilingual students, which is exciting. We call it emerging multilingual students because our students know more than one language, which is a really great skill. And we see that as a great asset and amazing. And so we want to help develop their language in English, but also we have some schools that dual language to help develop their language in Spanish. But this is the goal that we've been able to surpass every year. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah.
And then the last goal is third grade literacy. And this is the goal. We're focusing on all goals this year, but this is the goal they're really going to focus on because we have 18% and we want to be at 41%, which is the state average by 2028.
Right.
And this year we're at 18%. So as everyone knows that has been in Creighton, the test has been changed a little bit where oral reading fluency was added to the assessment. And so we had to adjust our monitoring and teaching a little bit to make sure that we were reaching all parts of literacy. And this year, we really want to focus on literacy in all subjects, in math, in music, in PE, and also obviously in reading and writing. And we're doing that as a district-wide focus.
Yeah. So we said we grew in all areas, and we actually did grow in that one, which seems counterintuitive because it's like you said we're growing, but we're at 18%, which is where we started. But as you pointed out, with some changes in the test and some new things being tested and us needing to adapt to that, we had 2 years where we actually went the wrong direction. So even though we grew by 5% last year, it took us kind of back to that initial starting point, which is better than it sounds because it took us back to the initial starting point with the more rigorous, test that has more areas, but we still have a good distance to make up over the next 2 years, which is why we're leaning into all that feedback from our teachers, staff, our students, our community, and we're putting together, even more to be able to make sure that we're successful with not only that goal, but with all of those goals.
We know that if we improve in literacy, it'll help improve in all goals. Just like you said, Superintendent Mann, it's also going to take a whole community effort to help improve literacy. And also we want our students to love reading, to love picking up a novel, picking up a book and writing and having choice in what they're reading. So you're going to see us sometimes come in with our favorite book or talk about our favorite books. And you'll see a lot of things focused around literacy and the love of reading and writing.
Yeah, there's, you talked a little bit about how we want to make certain we refer to multilingual students, emerging multilinguals, instead of English language learners, because if our students have proficiency in another language, we don't want them to lose it. We want them to continue to grow it, because being multilingual or multiliterate is a superpower. We want to give our kids superpowers, right? But a love of reading is another superpower, because there's all sorts of research and data that says people who read ultimately have better life outcomes for choices, for earnings, for all these things. So it's more than just helping our kids be able to read. It's really important that we help instill that love of reading, which really also goes a long way towards instilling a love of lifelong learning, which really is a powerful benefit. The world's changing so fast now that, one of the things our students need is the ability to learn things and then unlearn them and learn new things. And when you're a reader, that makes that a lot easier. And so we want to make sure we're empowering them with that.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting this year.
Yeah.
The other thing that goes along with the goals are called the superintendent guardrails.
Yep.
And the superintendent guardrails, there's 4 of them, is to make sure that we are in pursuit of the goals, we're still holding these values that our community holds, that we're making sure we're measuring that and that that's not happening. So I should probably just read what an example of one, and then maybe Superintendent Mann, you want to explain it?
Sure.
So the first one is, the superintendent will not neglect student social, emotional health, wellness, and development. And when it says superintendent, it doesn't mean just Superintendent Mann.
Can't do it all by myself.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody will not neglect student social, emotional health, wellness, and development. And why is it written in the negative?
So there's a very specific reason why. So the only thing in our student outcomes focused governance that's really written in the negative are the guardrails. And I've struggled with kind of how to easily explain this, but I know you and I were working with some of our leaders a couple of weeks back, and we went through a couple of different groups talking through this. And then one of our assistant principals talked a little bit about being on the freeway, and it really dawned on me that these are a lot like the guardrails on a freeway, right? Like particularly if you're driving, like we live in Arizona. So if you're driving to northern Arizona, you go on those mountain passes where if you turn right a little too hard, you're going to be, down the side of a mountain or something. So there's those metal railings, and they are there. They're not suggesting you don't get too close to them. If you get too close to them, they say no by bending your car,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they're not, it's not it would be nice if you, or something that's really displayed in the positive. It's stop. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's in the negative. It's a clear, this is the stopping point. You can't go beyond this point. And the reason for it is when we lean into student outcomes focused governance, we're going to make whatever adjustments we need to in the system in order to achieve those goals. But there are certain things that we might try to do that would take us outside of what sort of the desires and values of our community are, and our governing board really is the voice of those that vision and values for the community. And so in their two-way conversations with the community, not only were they able to identify that priority for what we want our kids ready for high school, they were also able to identify these are the things that we think are important to our community, that we want to make sure you're leaning into those things, in our schools. And so one of those obviously was that social emotional well-being. It very well aligns with the other work we're doing, because we know if a child isn't in a balanced or positive social emotional state, it impacts their learning, has a negative impact on their learning. So while it's a guardrail, it also is very much aligned with us being certain that we're doing everything we can to help kids achieve those improved outcomes. And so it's kind of a great guardrail, to be honest.
Yeah, and what we decided this year are when we measure each guardrail to see if we're making sure we're keeping this guardrail, we have interim measures. And so this year, to make sure that we're meeting the student social emotional health, wellness, and development, we're going to measure our ruler implementation.
Right.
And the ruler is kind of like a tier 1 for having that culture in the classroom of positivity and support, and to prevent any type of behavior concerns or challenges, which we can't prevent all, but this is where most students we're helping develop their social emotional health and wellness.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be measuring ruler with our interim measures. And one of the ways we're going to measure ruler effectiveness is attendance.
Yeah.
So we're going to, because we know if kids are happy and excited and have relationships with their teachers and relationship with people at school and with students, that they're more likely to come to school. Even our Kids Congress kids told us that.
Yeah.
We asked them, why are we having some trouble with attendance? And they said, if we have a good relationship with our teacher and our friends, and we want to be at school. And I know that they said that their peers feel the same way. So we're going to tackle that with trying to develop that environment where they are excited to come to school.
Yeah. And I think, that's a really powerful thing. We don't need to go much deeper into ruler, because I'm going to take a moment for a quick plug for, you don't just have to watch like the current Conversational Leadership podcast. If you go back a few episodes, you'll find our podcast with Dr. Amy Burgess, who's our Director for Student Support and Inclusion. And Dr. Burgess did an amazing job of giving a walkthrough what ruler is. Even gave enough of it that you could actually pick up a couple tidbits to help anybody who personally wanted to get into a better place with assessing their own emotional state and making adjustments to make certain their emotional state is aligned with whatever task they're trying to apply to. So
that's a good point to go back to that podcast.
Quick plug. Quick plug for that other podcast.
So the second one is the superintendent will not cause or allow conditions, practices, or procedures that are inequitable or insufficient for students. And this one, the way we're measuring it this year is we've been implementing the MTSS process, multi-tiered system of support, where it means we have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 instruction for academics and behavior. And the way I like to explain MTSS, and you can help me with my analogy if it doesn't make sense, but if you think about trying to be, everyone deserves to be healthy. And in order to be healthy, you have to have a good night's sleep. You have to have a good, nutritious diet. You have to get some exercise, get outside. Those are like some things that help you to be a healthy person.
Right.
And so that's kind of like tier 1. Everyone deserves to have a good night's sleep, some good food, exercise, and get outside. Tier 2 is when your health, maybe you get sick and catch a cold or something. So tier 2 might be you need some medication, or you need to go to the doctor to get checked out, but you still deserve tier 1, and tier 2 is just an intervention to help you address when you have something.
Right.
Tier 3 is like you get to the doctor, you get your medicine, and you still are not getting better. So
Mm.
maybe you have to go to a specialist and someone that is more specialized in whatever your symptoms are. But you're still getting a good night's sleep, a good diet outside, those kind of things. So MTSS is really tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So everyone's going to get tier 1 for academics and behavior. So that
Right.
ruler and get good academics. But then if you need some extra help, or we have diagnosed with our assessments that you need some extra support, that's where we have tier 2 and tier 3. So we're going to be measuring MTSS for this to make sure every student gets what they need. That's why it's called inequitable or insufficient for students. We want to make sure that every student gets what they need whenever they need it on academics and behavior.
It's a great thing to measure for that guardrail because it's really all about equitability, right? Meeting each student where they're at and what their needs are. And your analogy is fantastic. It's a great analogy. I think it's an amazing way to describe something that is like kind of a challenging, complicated concept, and functionally that really kind of explains it well.
And then the third one is the superintendent will not allow the district to operate without a system to recruit, retain strong teachers by empowering staff through culturally relevant and differentiated professional development, which this one is one we want to take care of our teachers and our staff.
Yeah.
And we know if our teachers and staff are well taken care of, they know they'll take care of our students.
Yeah.
But also we want to make sure to build that capacity, help them be strong educators to help. We know that they make the most impact in the classroom.
Yeah.
And so this one we're measuring with our PLCs,
Right.
professional learning communities.
Yeah.
And so we have been implementing professional learning communities as well, but we want to become more aligned across our schools. And so we have some district expectations. And during PLCs, all of our schools will be discussing student data. We're really focusing on literacy data and also math data, but literacy in like our K-3 grades, and making sure that our teams have an opportunity to meet and talk about data, talk about kids. And then we know, which I know you shared before, PLCs, and when you're working with a team and you're collaborating, that you are more likely to be happy in your job if you're working towards a common goal with your team.
Yeah, and actually all of that leans into a lot of research about not only what helps make certain that, our teaching and learning teams are effective, but like you were saying, makes them happy. There was some research done specifically in the state of Arizona, but there's also national research that say that's high yield for having people have job satisfaction and happiness in their job. But it's at the same time, it's a wonderful thing because it's high yield for helping improve outcomes for kids. I almost feel like we're cheating sometimes because we have these great things we're measuring to ensure our guardrails, but they kind of do double duty for us because they're ensuring our guardrails are in place, but they also help lean into making sure that we're doing more and better for ensuring that those student outcomes are being improved. So it's really cool.
And the very last one, the superintendent shall not allow adult convenience or preference to take priority over the academic progress of students.
Yep.
And that's just about what student outcome focused governance is about, is that student outcomes don't change unless adult behavior change. I don't know if I'm saying the quote right, but something like that.
Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change, I believe is the quote. So.
And so this last one, we've been measuring this the last 3 years the same way, which we've been doing it through our data-wise learning walks.
Right.
And the reason why it's through the data-wise learning walks is we want an opportunity to see every classroom, to see how we can support teachers. We know what is going to make effective teaching so we look for learning targets, success criteria, look for engagement rigor in the classroom. And also the classroom environment. And so that helps us determine what type of coaching, professional development, and helps us with our inputs to reach our goals doing those learning walks. So we're continuing those this year. And it's usually a group of about 10 people that includes directors, coaches, coordinators, your school principal and assistant principal. Everyone has an opportunity for them to go in classrooms and come back and collaborate, and they learn from each other. And then we create action plans from that to decide what we need to do to help support our teachers. So it's not evaluative. It is really just to get kind of like a snapshot of what's happening at all of our schools to help our schools be successful.
Yeah, it's kind of a monitor and adjust step, right? So, and it's also, to a degree, there's an old saying, that which gets measured gets done. So it's good that we're measuring it, but it's really pretty high yield because you talked about multi-tiered systems of support earlier. And one of the things I heard you say was, well, everybody, whether they're getting tier 2 or tier 3 services, needs strong tier 1, right? Well, all of those things we're monitoring and adjusting. Do we have strong tier 1? And how do we support our teachers and staff to ensure that we do? And that ties also back to the goal about, maintaining and supporting our teachers, because we're in there helping to support them, by ensuring that, they're getting feedback and we're figuring out what other things they need. So one of the things I think is really cool about the way our goals and guardrails have come together is the goals support the guardrails support the goals, but even within the guardrails themselves, they seem to support each other, which is pretty amazing. You go back.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to the one about, student social emotional well-being. Well, teachers being happy in the classroom, guaranteed those teachers are happier if the kids have, good social emotional well-being. It's going to make an improvement in their work environment.
And we also measure that in Guardrail 4 with the learning walks, the classroom environment. The other thing I want to highlight about the learning walks is we showed this with our new teachers too this week, is that this is not meant to be scary or intimidating because you have people coming into your room, but we really just want from the district perspective to see what's happening in the classroom because it helps us make decisions. We don't want to make decisions without actually knowing what's happening in the classroom and talking to teachers and talking to school leadership and talking to our coaches. And so that is another purpose of learning walks, is to help us with our decision making.
I remember, I think you and I did a podcast, this might be even like 2 years ago, on the DataWise process, right? And we've referenced DataWise a few times. So I might get this wrong, I'm a little rusty, but I think that's what we referred to as street level data when we were doing the DataWise process, right? We're actually getting out into the street. In this case, it's not an actual street, it's a classroom, to get that street level data to see what's actually happening so we can make adjustments as we need to make sure we're supporting our teachers and staff and ultimately our students.
Yes, that's definitely street data.
Yeah.
I think that it's kind of like the gist of student outcome focused governance. I mean, one of these other times I would like to just share a little bit more about Creighton's school theory of action.
I love
that gets
that
in more
idea.
detail.
Yeah.
But that's something we can talk about next time, which just helps us with our action planning and our inputs.
Yeah, if you're willing to do it, I think that would make a great future episode for us, and we'll do that. I think the only other thing I'll add is I know we've talked a lot about inputs. We've talked a little bit about some of our outputs. We may not have labeled it as such, but we talked about our goals, which kind of lean into what an outcome is. And so just, if people are wondering what are inputs, they're things at the beginning of the process. So right now our inputs for this year, we know right now at the beginning of the school year, and they're typically the things you're doing to make certain you get the outcomes that you're looking for. And then you have your outputs. Well, outputs are the things you're measuring during the year. So you talked about, the outputs that we're measuring for our our guardrails, and then also, we have some for our goals.
Well, for our goals, I do want to say that we are continuing with DNA, and then we're also adding STAR, which we'll have to. So
we've got some new testing systems. We may talk about those in a future episode as well. And then the outcomes are typically things like those goals and the annual targets towards those goals. So, okay. Well, I think we've probably given people enough of a rundown. If you aren't part of the Creighton School District, hopefully this is of interest to you, particularly if you're in the education space. If you are one of our team members, maybe it helps you understand this a little bit better. Always helps me understand it better when I talk with Dr. Pombo about it. But we are just so excited for the new school year, and we are here to support you and help you to have an amazing year and help our students have the best outcomes that we can help create for them. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on a future episode of Conversational Leadership.